Hi, third graders. We're going to do another lesson today on how to determine the central message of a story. So let's get started. So think back to what you learned yesterday about the central message of a story. In your own words, tell yourself what central message means. Okay, these are some things that you should have said. The central message is the big idea of the text. It is the lesson that the author wants us to learn. And the central message is a lesson about life. And that brings us to our learning target today. Today we will determine or find the central message of a fable and use key details, which will be our evidence, from the text to explain how we figured out what the central message is. So today we're going to practice how to find the central message of a story by reading the story The Fox and the Stork together. And there is a graphic organizer right next to this story that has 3 boxes at the bottom for 3 key details that we will fill in together by writing in what we notice that the characters are doing or thinking that would lead us to determine or find out what the central message of the story is. Remember, the character is learning a lesson for himself, but that lesson can also apply to our lives. So let's read The Fox and the Stork together. By the way, for those online students, I posted the links to these stories and to the graphic organizer if you want to fill them out yourself. If not, if you can't print them, then I want you to grab a piece of paper so that you can write down what we do together on this graphic organizer. So pause the video and grab a piece of paper, or go ahead and print out the story, The Fox and the Stork, and the graphic organizer if you want to have those papers with you. All right, let's read together The Fox and the Stork. Long ago, Fox and Stork were friends. One evening, Fox invited Stork over for dinner. As a joke, he served only a shallow dish of thin soup. So when I say shallow, I want you to look at this dish right here. How flat and low it is. And then look at the beak of the stork. The stork is a bird with a really long beak. It would be very hard for the stork to be able to scoop soup out of a dish like that. For Fox lapped up the soup. That means he licked it with his tongue very quickly. He lapped up the soup, but the stork could only get a few drops with her long, narrow bill. I am sorry that you do not like the soup, said Fox, as he laughed behind Stork's back. Stork did not complain or say that Fox was unfair. She just said, "Will you come to my house for dinner soon?" Fox quickly agreed to dine with Stork the following evening. When Fox arrived at the Stork's house, he smelled a delicious aroma. That's a smell, a delicious smell. I wonder what tasty meal Stork has cooked. Fox hurried to the table. Stork had made a stew filled with tiny bits of meat and vegetables. Stork brought the stew to the table in a tall jar with a narrow mouth. So look at this jar here. It's tall and narrow. It's easy for Stork to get his nose in, or his bill in, but I wonder how easy it would be for the fox to drink out of that. Let's see. I'm down here. Now it was Stork's turn to laugh. She reached into the jar with her long, narrow bill and ate the delicious stew. Poor Fox sat by and watched. He could not get his snout, that's this part, far enough into the jar to reach the stew. He could only lick off the bits left on the mouth of the jar. After dinner, the hungry fox headed home. He knew that he could not blame the stork. He had been unkind to her. Fox had learned that you should treat others the way you want to be treated. Okay, now that we have read that story, we are going to look for the key details in the text that shows the actions of the main characters that will help us, that will lead us to determining what the message is that the author wants us to learn from the characters in the story. So when I go back into the text, I see that there are two main characters, the fox and the stork. However, Fox started the story out, so the story is more about the fox. So let's go back into the text and see, what did the fox do that started the story out? What was his action? So pause the video and I want you to go back and look yourself. Okay, if you said that the fox served Stork a meal that Stork could not eat because the dish was too shallow for his beak, then you're right on track. So go ahead and pause the video. If you printed this paper out, I want you to write it down in the key details box. If you're making your own on just a blank sheet of paper, pause the video and I want everyone to write down this first detail. Okay, now that we have an action of the first character, the fox, let's look and see what the stork did that would lead us to determine what the central message is. So pause the video again and see if you can tell what the action of the stork is. Okay, if you said that the stork served Fox a meal that he could not eat because the jar was tall and narrow, then you are on the right track. So go ahead and if you didn't write anything for detail number 2, please pause the video and do that now. All right, the third thing that we need to include is, how did this story end? What is something that the main character, which in this case would be the fox, what is something that Fox did at the end of the story that would help us determine what the central message is, what the lesson is that we are trying to learn? All right, if you said at the end Fox went home hungry, but he didn't blame the stork because Fox also treated the stork unfairly, then you're right. So go ahead and pause the video and write that down for key detail number 3. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look back into our 3 key details and we're going to see what kind of lesson we can learn from these details in the story and what we can learn from the characters. So I know Fox started this by serving a meal to his friend Stork that he knew he wouldn't be able to eat. Then Stork decided, I'm going to do the same thing. He served a meal to Fox, knowing that he wouldn't be able to eat it. But at the end, the fox went home and he was hungry, but he couldn't blame the stork because he knew he started this. He served a meal to the stork that the stork couldn't eat. So I want you to pause the video now and see what you think the central message of this story is. What lesson can we learn from what the characters in the story did? All right, if you wrote treat others the way you want to be treated, then you are correct. That is the central message of this story. And if you look down here at the bottom of the story, in the last sentence, it said, Fox had learned that you should treat others the way you want to be treated. Well, we know that Fox did learn his lesson, but that is also a lesson that we can learn for our lives, because remember, a central message is a message for everyone, not just the characters in the story. So your assignment today is going to be to read The Tortoise and the Eagle. If you are an online learner, you have this story is included in a link in the Schoology assignment. so that you can open it up and read it on your computer. And you can also open up the graphic organizer with the central message and the 3 key details paper if you want to print that out. Otherwise, you can just write the details and the central message on a plain piece of paper. So here's what you're going to do with that story. I want you to do a close reading of this story. The first read that you will, when you read, is just to see what this story is about. A tortoise is another name for a turtle, so this is about a turtle and an eagle, and it is from a story that was originated in the country of, or the continent of Africa. It's an African folk fable. Then the second time you read it is when you're going to go through the text very carefully and look for the key details that show the actions or the thoughts of the main characters. It's always good to look for the problem that the main character is having and start there. And then what are some things that happened after that each of the characters did or thought or said that would help you determine what the central message is. And then the third time that you read the story, you're going to look back on the details to see if you can figure out what the lesson is or the central message that the characters learned that we can learn from them. Okay, so let's review what your assignment is. You're going to read the story, The Tortoise and the Eagle. Remember, it's in Schoology, and it's also in the assignment with the little puzzle piece in Schoology. I want you to find 3 key details that will help you determine the central message. Usually it's going to have to do with the main character or characters of the story, and it's going to start around the problem. So I would hint, find the problem of the story, and then what happens after that, and then what happens at the end. So those are 3 good places to look to find those key details that will help you figure out the central message. And then I want you to write down the central message. That's the lesson that we are learning from the characters. So this paper we talked about in our class meeting on Monday. This is also in Schoology. If you have access to a printer and you want to print it out, you can write down the 3 key details on this paper and then write the central message down. Or you could just do it like we did when we were doing our class meeting, where we just wrote it on a regular piece of paper. And then you're going to take that information that you have on there and you're going to use that to help you answer the questions in Schoology in the little puzzle piece assignment. The assignment in Schoology says to find 3 key details, so it's the 3 key details from this particular paper that help you determine the central message and then decide what the central message is. Remember, it's the lesson that we are learning. So when you're finished with the paper, either this one that you might print out or the paper that you wrote on your own, I want you to put it inside of your red reading folder when you're all finished with it so that I can collect it during our next folder exchange. Okay, so after you're done watching this video, go back into Schoology, find the little puzzle piece with the story, The Tortoise and the Eagle, click on it and tell me what you think about tell me the 3 key details that you found and the central message. All right, good luck, boys and girls.